Hello, everybody, and the weekend of fights is over. Well, kind of. I'm sure there's something going on this fine Sunday of a combat sports nature, but we've had our UFC card. We had our PFL Bellator Super card, which probably didn't really live up to that name. Don't get me wrong. I don't think I was disappointed by any of it, but if you were looking to make new fans of PFL and Bellator, I'm not really sure that card in Saudi Arabia did the job. That's what I'll say. The UFC card was really, really good. And I'm going to touch on this just real quickly. It is super bizarre that the UFC is calling like managers and fighters who are members of the antitrust lawsuit against them as witnesses. Or I don't know if witnesses is really the right word, but to the stand, so to speak. Donald Cerrone, Chael Sonnen, Michael Bisping, amongst others. It's a bit weird. Also, that the managers in general would be involved at all, because realistically speaking, here, if you look at this, if you look at any result of this, a competent manager who is looking for the best deal for his fighters or her fighters, and is confident in their skills and their ability to navigate in an actual like competitive market, would want the antitrust lawsuit to be lost by the UFC. Because, like it or not, having one major, and this is not an indictment of the whole MMA landscape, because there are advantages to what I'm critiquing. But from a managerial point of view, your ability to get the best deal possible involves having multiple suitors for your client. If it's just the UFC and a couple of like really small like fish in the pond, PFL, for example, that are losing money, you're inevitably not going to be able to get the best deal for your client possible. And not that the antitrust is going to immediately fix this, but like in theory, the less restrictive contracts that are essentially being sought, an end to some of the anti-competitive stuff the UFC does, would be a positive for managers who, again, are competent at their job and that their skill is not just being in good with Dana White. The problem, of course, is a lot of being a fighter manager is being in good with Dana White, unfortunately. And it's brought some particularly venomous Ali Abdelaziz defenders out of the woodwork, which is a bit weird. I said this in a post on Twitter. I just find it really, really bizarre that like we are the sport of sort of counterculture, anti-establishment, violence, frankly. And we have literal fans of promoters, which are very much the establishment, and fans of managers who are in bed with the promoters and whose main skill is being in bed with the promoters, and we are fans of them. Like it's just weird. You don't talk about football, gridiron football, American football, and like talk about like, man, you know what? Did you see that deal? Did you see that amazing deal that the manager for Kyler Murray hasn't left Arizona. Russell Wilson got for his client? It's amazing. I'm so proud of that guy. I'm not proud of Russell Wilson. I'm proud of that guy, that manager over there. It was kind of weird. I was having a conversation with someone who like was vehemently defending Ali Abdelaziz's handling of Kayla Harrison's contract and like career, and just like ignoring that Kayla Harrison's career is entirely Kayla Harrison, like Olympic medalist, and the money she made in PFL predominantly winnings from a GP. But no. We got to credit the manager. We got to credit the manager for that great job he did, which is bulk. Anyways, let's get to the fight. Let's get to the fights. Let's talk about PFL first. Because I talked about PFL first. It happened first, and I talked about PFL first on the predictions. Prediction-wise, did really quite well. Clarissa Shields won a largely meaningless fight against a now 1-3 fighter. Bajia Ali Walsh won his pro debut with way too much fanfare, way too much hype. Don't get me wrong here. fighting a 1-0 fighter makes all the sense in the world. I would have preferred to be a little more size parity, but hey. But there's nothing wrong with Bajal Lee Walsh's career. Like this is the level he should be fighting and whatever. It's just it's kind of weird hearing him say like I want to be my own man. I don't want to be Muhammad Ali's grandson. But the promoter will tell you that 48 times over the course of the fight. And the only reason you're making your pro debut on the second largest promotion in the world, third largest maybe, is the fact that you're Muhammad Ali's grandson. Like, I don't know. It's just a weird situation. Anyways, the fight wasn't very good. Aaron Pico picked up a good ground and pound victory over Henry Corrales. It was nice to see Aaron Pico go out there and actually be a destructive beast and get a very just clear, dominant victory. That's nice. Speaking of dominant victories, AJ McKee submitting Clay Collard, very effective. Arm triangle. These two fights were the highlights of the night, honestly. And then we get into Yoel Romero versus Thiago Santos, which was a fight that, well, is what you get when you put two guys with a combined age of 86 years old in the cage. It's 86 years old, right? They're 40. I'm pretty sure they're 40 and 46 respectively. Almost 47 in Romero's case. So yeah, almost 87 years of age between the two of them. Not a great fight. You don't have to go back and watch it. Vadim Nemkov made short work of Bruno Capolosa, which was nice. And Jason Jackson stopped Ray Cooper III 23 seconds into the second round. So that's a big deal for him because, to be honest, the big knock on Jason Jackson for a while was a lack of finishes because during his run up to the belt, he decisioned Strasser Kimoto, Jordan Meehan, Benson Henderson, Neiman Gracie, Paul Daly, Douglas Lima. It was like all decisions. And now he's come out and he's finished Yaroslav Amosov and Ray Cooper III. He's kind of living up more to that ass-kicking machine moniker. So that's good. Appreciate that. Johnny Eblen versus Ipika Sanganai was not great. Eblen picked up a decision victory. And the main event between Henan Ferreira versus Ryan Bader lasted all of 21 seconds with Bader getting knocked out. Man, Ryan Bader is the bad luck guy. Like every time he gets to that point where it's like, wow, we're gonna get this like big fight where he's gonna get recognized. Finally, it just gets knocked out. It's just it like dates back all the way to like when he lost to like John Jones and Tito Ortiz, and then Lyoto Machida loss was again like him getting to the point of like, oh, this guy could be something, and it just keeps happening. Anyways, technically speaking, this means Renan Ferrari is going to fight Francis Ngannou, but press X for doubt, I guess. They didn't even do the stare down afterwards. I did think that the don't get me wrong here. A lot of people are like defending Ngannou for not doing the stare down because like, oh, this fight's not going to happen. He's just going to do boxing, which is probably 100% true and absolutely is a defensible point of view. That being said, you're a partner in the company. PFL has, like it or not, done Francis Ngannou like not. I don't want to say a solid, but like he's given them an ability. As much as he's given them the ability to profit off of his name, they are like doing a pretty good job of getting him out there and promoting him and stuff. So I feel a little reciprocity. It wouldn't be difficult to just go out there and kind of hype the fight, even if it is complete wolf tickets, not happening, whatever. I would have still done the stare down. But anyways, like I said, the card is perfectly fine. There were some excellent fighters in the Bellator PFL roster. Most of this main card are really, really solid dudes. And AJ McKee, Aaron Pico, Jason Jackson, Vadim Nemkov, like they performed incredibly well. They did their thing. And it just kind of got a little lame at the top. I would have liked something more from Eblen, I guess, is really what it comes down to. Because I think realistically, Eblen is their guy. In terms of like rankings and actual substance as a fighter. Like, he may be the best middleweight in the world. It didn't look like that against Ipika Sanganai, though. That's the problem. He may legitimately, I haven't been dissuaded from that fact that he could be, but Yeah. A bigger performance would have been nice. Because, although to be honest, with the way the welterweight division is with the UFC right now, with Leon Edwards on top having that pretty dreadful fight with Colby Covington, the fact that Colby Covington is still probably the most talked about fighter, and the fact that they can't even really get a title fight together, by the way, offering 3 relatively hardcore practicing Muslims a fight during Ramadan for the title, that's pretty stupid, especially when, like, the title shot should be Bilal Muhammad, and the structure of the division has to go back to the point where, like, doing the right things and getting there. Like, it's people have constantly said, like, are you really interested for Bilal Muhammad, Leon Edwards? No, you can go back if you want. There is I don't know if it's just on YouTube, but like if you look back at the card where they fought the first time and it ended in the eye poke, I was completely unfascinated with the fight. I'm still unfascinated with the fight. The problem is that in order to continuously keep the activity in the division and keep the division rolling and to inspire people to do the right thing, I had a big talk about this with on a Twitter thread where talking about like how the UFC incentivizes inactivity. Bilal Muhammad is the guy who went out there and did everything that you're supposed to do as a fighter. He won. He fought down the rankings. He was active. He took short notice fights. I'm pretty sure he's even fought during Ramadan over the course of his career, like even defying religious convention to fight. He has done everything correctly. And if you want people to do that, you want the divisions to keep moving, and you want the whole structure of your fighting promotion to be smooth, well-oiled machine, that behavior has to be incentivized with a reward. That's why Bilal Muhammad should get the title shot. It's not that I think he's going to win. It's not that I'm a particularly big fan of his. It's not that I find the fight particularly fascinating and interesting. But it's very much the same way that like John Fitch got a shot back in the day against GSP. It is how things are supposed to work. You should be able to hold this fighter up who's done all the right things and be like, this is the payoff. Anyways, enough of that. What I was getting at there is that like Jason Jackson, if they can keep, if they can feed him a reasonably good dose of like welterweights, the way that the UFC is handling its welterweight division, maybe he becomes one of the best fighters in the world. Maybe Vadim Nemkov can do it. I don't think Aaron Pico or AJ McKee can. I'm sorry. The UFC's 155 division, which they are both fighting in, is just that good. It is that good, and there's no real way around that. Let's move over to the UFC Fight Night. Now, I lost some of my notes here on the earlier fights because I reverted the document to a prior version. But I believe I remember the fights. Main event, Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. Dose, I'm holding up 2 fingers. I want to be high on Royval's performance here because this was the best version of Brandon Royval I think we've ever seen. This was high output at altitude, 500 plus strikes thrown, 177 landed. Apparently only shut down 2 of 5 takedowns, but it felt like he was actually really, really hard to handle in the clinch, which is an improvement. These are all super improving moments, and like he should be 100% proud of himself. Great performance. But this fight was more about Brandon Moreno losing. He became an overhand merchant. Saw that one on Twitter, stealing it. Where he would throw a single overhand shot and just be done. There was no connection into a combination. There was no real effective jab game. There was no real urgency. Don't get me wrong, he threw 211 strikes, landed 219 strikes, landed 118 of them. 119. But that's not a great pace for flyweight in a 5-round fight. And you're fighting against Brandon Royval. Don't get me wrong, you're not going to match Royval and his 556 strikes thrown. Like, that's just not going to happen. That's not a possibility. But you do have to do a better job of it. And getting outlanded in Three out of the 5 rounds, tied in 1 round, and winning the first round by 3 strikes is not going to do it. I actually had 4 rounds for Royval, which I know is a bit of a weird scorecard because I gave the first to Royval. Watching it live, I just could not. I could not believe that I was like, I was just kind of disappointed that, like, realistically speaking, this was a pretty poor performance by Moreno, even in the first round. Like, as much as he was landing at a really good percentage, 65%, pretty damn good. He just wasn't doing much. He was apparently he outlanded Royval, so this is a vibes thing. This is definitely one of those like vibe moments where like you're watching a fight and I guess you just have expectations of a fighter. You've picked someone to win and you're disappointed by how they're fighting. You kind of see the loss coming, I guess, in a nutshell. And maybe that was it, because looking at the stats, that probably, realistically speaking, along with the second round, are Moreno's rounds. But then, yeah, he lost the third, fourth, and the fifth. Never landed more than 30 strikes in a round until the fifth round, where he landed 36. Royval is still incredibly hittable, don't get me wrong. Like, there are still problems for Royval, but he went out there and he executed a plan. I just can't help but think that Brandon Moreno didn't. That this was a fight that, like, if you did a rematch, I wouldn't be dissuaded from picking Moreno if I could get into his brain and see, like, okay, he realized that he fought dumb and he's not going to do that again. The problem here for the flyweight division is that it is a division that is constantly on, honestly, just kind of life support, despite being like really entertaining. We're going to get to a bunch of other flyweight fights in this card that were pretty fun. And you're now talking about Royval Pantoja 3 for a title shot? Or for a title fight, I should say. That is a weird spot to be in. It's a weird spot to be in, but like, it's also one that, like, I don't know if you can go, like we were talking about at welterweight, how, like it or not, people who do the things they're supposed to do, that win the fights they're supposed to win, that do the things that keep the thing moving, should be rewarded. And that is Royval. I don't know even who else you give it to. Like, that's why Amir Albazi pulling out of this fight was really kind of a big deal, because Albazi was your hope to get somebody new into the conversation. I guess you also have Manal Kape, but like, even Manal Kape is a rematch for Pantoja. Like, that's the problem. Like, it's kind of a really bad spot for this division. I guess you do. I guess you end up doing that. You end up doing Pantoja versus Royval again. For Moreno, I would go with someone like Tadger Ulanbekov. I think it's a reasonably fun fight. Ulanbekov has been impressive in his performances, but against much lower competition. And he's a guy that maybe you can get into there. Maybe can break up the monotony at the top of the division. But wait to find out. Yair Rodriguez versus Brian Ortega. Round 1 went incredibly badly for Ortega. For one thing, he was bouncing around at the start of the round and like rolled his ankle before the fight even started. Even addressed it in his post-fight, where he was talking about being like, "Oh, please God, don't let this fight be over already." And then he got beat up. He got beat up in the first round. Oh my Lord. Yair dropped him really, really early. Flurry of shots. Ortega popping up. Ended up on the bottom for a bit, getting beaten up. Early on, there was like really, really very little offense that was working for Ortega. Like, he was looking for the body lock. He was looking for basically kind of like swing and cling. And Yair was defending really, really well. Landing good variety to the legs, to the head, to the body, and he did start getting lazy on defense. He really did. There were a couple of moments where like Ortega would, pay a great price for it, but would come forward, throw some punches, clip Yair because his head's retreating on a straight line and not really moving side to side. It's predictable. you can kind of like, all right, I'm going to throw this punch. It's going to miss, but the follow-up is going to hit because I know exactly where your head is going to go. And then it got particularly dumb because he sweeps the leg of Ortega, puts him on his back, puts some ground and pound there, gets into trouble. Ortega steps up, gets up, body locks him to the fence, and Yair's like, I can go for a Kimura. No. Gets taken down. It's the only reason I didn't give it a 10-8 round was like that last little bit where like essentially Ortega finishes the round on top doing better, even though, what were the numbers? I'm curious. 50-7 significant strikes. But the weird thing is, like, I could see Yair losing. Like, I felt it in my gut. I'm like, oh, okay, Yair Rodriguez has won the first round. I'm like, but there's silliness. There's a lack of risk apprehension. There's a lack of all of these things. And then he ends up on bottom for like 4 minutes of the second round. And Yair didn't have anything for him on the bottom, really. He's bleeding quite badly. I think it was to the side of his eye that was bleeding quite badly, or maybe under it. And just the flow of blood was going to the side. And then in the third round, Ortega, body locks him, chirps him to the canvas, gets a dominant position, gets an arm triangle, and gets a tap out. It's a weird fight because, like, is Ortega back? Is Ortega heading towards, like, title contention? He's not particularly old. He's certainly still durable. But kind of like Moreno losing to Royval in the main event, this fight felt like a lot of, like, Yair, you should and could win this fight. Or could and should, I should say. Win this fight. You have the tools. You just... excuse me. You got confident kicking ass a little too much. And you ended up, kind of... I don't want to say throwing the fight away or anything, but like losing in a nutshell. I'm going to go meme matchups for both of these guys because I don't, they were both listed as guys that Ilia Topuria didn't want to fight, wants the division to move past them, blah, 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 blah. And don't get me wrong. I don't think his like unwillingness to fight them should actually deny them a title shot. It's just, I think that they both kind of need to do more, before I really consider it, because like there are some people on decent runs, mostly Bozar Evelev. But like, we are talking about a Brian Ortega who's 2-3 in his last 5. We are talking about a Yair Rodriguez who's 2-3 in his last 5. It is like time for them to kind of get a roll going. And these are just really fun fights. Ortega versus Bryce Mitchell, Yair Rodriguez versus Giga Chikadze. Come on. How would you not love those two options? That's what I would do. Daniel Zellhuber defeated, I'm blanking on his first name, and I don't have my notes right in front of me. Francisco Prado. There you go. I knew it was Prado. I just was blanking on the first name. I thought Prado came out really well in the first round. He went basically punch for punch with, and kick for kick with Zellhuber. He was solving the distance equation. The fact that he is much less lanky, I should say, than Zellhuber. He was able to get in there. He couldn't keep it up. As the second and the third round went on, he was being held at range much more. He was being outthrown, outlanded, outworked by Zellhuber, who was beating up, busted up his eyebrow, busted up his nose. The damage was showing there, and Dominic Cruz was loving it. Someday, someone will... Well, actually, I shouldn't say this, because it's already been explained to him on air by, I think it was John Anik, that like, no, damage in like the first round, it counts for the first round, not the second and the third round. And damage in the third round doesn't count towards the second and the first round. Like, that's damage is the primary scoring criteria, but like Cruz doesn't seem to understand the idea of scoring a fight by rounds, which is very weird. But anyways, it's very weird because he was one of the smartest fighters, like game planning wise, like for a long, long time. Like we thought Dominic Cruz was a genius. Then we got him on commentary, and it's shaky. But yeah, Zell Huber just kind of took over the fight. About the only thing I can say is that Zell Huber in the later stage of the fight started going deep to the lower body instead of the calf kick, instead of like using his shin, because his shin was very marked up, very beat up. So I guess that was the victory for Prado, I guess, is that he stopped him from calf kicking him because he was doing, I guess, a good job of checking it. So that was kind of cool. Zell Huber got a pretty good reaction after the fight. Not as good as some of the other Mexican fighters on the card. Yasmin Hauergui got a great one. Manuel Torres got a heck of a reaction. But Zell Huber did a good work here. Again, he has that weird loss to Trey Ogden, which is it's gonna haunt me every time because I'm gonna look at it and be like, oh, I gotta watch that again when he fights next. Even though, like, admittedly, I don't think there's a lot of guys at lightweight that are gonna neutralize him as hard as Ogden did. But we'll see. I've got him against Ismail Bonfim. I just think it'll be a fun fight for that kind of fits his position in the rankings. I don't know about Prado. I penciled in Ricky Glenn in a 155 fight because that would be fun. But he was talking about 145 at his last fight, so I don't know where he's weight class going. Raul Rosas Jr. and Ricky Tercios got canceled, which I'm very disappointed in because I put money on the underdog to win. Anyways, I was disappointed that got canceled. I'm interested in like the progress of Raul Rosas Jr., even though I'm like picking against him fairly frequently. Not that frequently, actually. Actually, this might have been the first time I did because I think I actually picked him to beat Christian Rodriguez. Yasmin Hauergui versus Sam Hughes. This was disappointing in the sense that it was just like really, really, really repetitive. Like it was Hughes not really varying. There you go. Her entries and like giving the same basic 1-2 combination to Hauergui over and over and over again for 15 minutes, basically getting her face beat up. And but it was a good showing by Hauergui. She was a little bit more cautious at the start than she normally is, but that seems to be kind of like the only real reference we had to her loss to Denise Gomes. She stopped all 6 takedowns that Hughes tried. They were not great takedowns, though. So I would not read too much into that. But yeah, got the job done, and it was a good time. Next up for them, I've got Hauergui versus the Piera Rodriguez Cynthia Calvillo winner, particularly if it's Piera Rodriguez, because if it's Cynthia Calvillo, the world may come to an end. And for Hughes, I've got Kaneko Murata as a similar fighter who is better than what her UFC record would suggest. They're both women who have a lot of losses, but like they're good fighters, like very good fighters. And it would be interesting to see them deal with kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Hughes is a kind of lacking in horsepower volume fighter. Murata is the opposite. Like she's quite strong, but I think she fights at too slow of a pace. So that feels like a clash of styles that would just be pretty interesting. Could also be just Murata taking her down over and over again and controlling her, but hopefully not. Manuel Torres made short work of Chris Duncan with a rear naked choke. Surprised at the rear naked choke because I thought for sure he was probably going to knock him out. Duncan did hurt Torres with like the first shot he landed, and I think according to UFC stats, it was the only shot he landed. Yeah, they've got Chris Duncan having landed one significant 1 out of 2 strikes. Anyways, the first one hurt him, and then he ate a head kick. which was interesting response from Torres to getting clipped. Was like, what if I just kick you in the head? They end up grappling. Torres goes for a guillotine. He fails with the guillotine, but he does manage to stand up, takes Duncan down, lands a good elbow, takes the back. Duncan kind of shook him off, but Torres managed to, get back to it. Matt return him, put him back down, get the rear naked choke, crush down. Crowd was pumped. He wants Patty. He will not get Patty. He wanted like top 15 as well. I don't think he'll get that either. I've got Joe Selecki. It's a uninspired pick. But my question with Torres is, how legit are you? Because the guys he's beaten are all kind of like just limited fighters. Like if you realistically look at it, beating Nicholas Mota, he's had some problems. Beating Frank Camacho early, slow starter. Beating Chris Duncan, decidedly unathletic, unstructured guy. The guy he beat on Contender Series, also not very good. One of the weaker guys they bring on for Contender Series at 155, Colton England. And then you have like a 10-11 dude, Daniel Vega, who I'm not really familiar with. 2 losses there as well. Pedro Rincon, who's 2-0. No business fighting an 8-1 fighter. I still don't know. There's a lot of like physical attributes. There's a lot of dynamicism. There's a lot of danger to him that could realistically be a very good fighter. It could also just be a guy who gets like completely hard stuck as an action fighter. And Selecki is a guy who is going to bring a distilled down A game to him. And we'll see what happens. And for Duncan, I've got the previously mentioned Nicholas Mota for just a fun time at the fights. Christian Quinones versus Ronnie Barcelos. I was interested to see Barcelos get stronger as this fight went on because his historical cardio issues are noted, and the fact that he is 36 years old. He was one of the fighters who had like some of the weaker acclimatization to the altitude as well. He came out pretty late to Mexico City to get acclimatized. And I don't believe he trains at altitude in general, but maybe he does. I'm not super familiar with Brazilian geography. First round was pretty good for Quinones. He landed the better. He landed apparently. Well, according to this, he actually got outlanded 12-4. But he got some takedowns, significant strikes wise. But he got some takedowns. He got some ground and pound that I think they're just not really counting as significant, which is a bit weird. I thought he won the round. I thought Barcelos took over in the second round. His power starting to show through. Also, liberal cage grabbing. And the fact that Quinones went away from the takedowns, I think, was also a big thing. He went 2 for 6 in the first round and then 0 for 1 for the rest of the fight. I think that is a mistake. But Barcelos was just kind of picking him off and then ended up rear naked choking him. It was a rear naked choke, right? Yes. Rear naked choke. I was remembering it was a choke, and I was not remembering if it was a rear naked. Coming out of this fight, though, we have a weird thing here. Like, Barcelos is a guy who, if you go back a couple years, I was really excited about. He came to the UFC kind of late. I was like, this guy is pretty athletic. Let him go out there, kind of rush him up the charts. And they didn't really do that, and then they kind of did. And he stumbled 1-4 in his last 5, of course. And this fight didn't change the impression that he just kind of is he's a fading fighter. And I never really know what to do with that. Like, it's not Tony Ferguson levels where I'm like, please retire, please retire, please retire. Will you retire now? Please retire. He's not there. Like, obviously he won this fight. He looked competent and so on, but he does look not like peak Barcelos. Like, that's the thing, is that I think, unfortunately, we have a guy who probably should have peaked up higher, should have been more than he is, and is on the way down. For Quinones, he's lost 2 in a row now, so I've just got him against a Dana White Contender Series guy because time to build a little bit of a streak going. Like, he's a fun fighter. He's not going to be a champion, whatever, but just doesn't have the athleticism, doesn't have the style. But he's got action fighter written all over him. He's got the low end of what Manuel Torres could be, I guess. Jesus Aguilar versus Mateus Mendonca. Mendonca scored a lot of takedowns in this fight, but Aguilar generally landed some more impressive shots and was more active as far as like submissions are concerned. And in the end, he got the win. I think I scored it for Mendonca. Man, weird. Flyweight belt with 19-18 significant strikes landed. That is not great. But yeah, 4 takedowns for Mendonca, begged 8 minutes and 44 seconds of top control time. I think I had him winning. No, I scored it for Mendonca or for Aguilar actually. So I guess I agree with the split. There you go. Aguilar versus Clayton Carpenter, Mendonca versus a guy we're talking about later, Ronaldo Rodriguez. Edgar Chairez defeated Daniel Lacerda with a triangle. They both missed weight. The less said about this fight, the better, I guess. Chairez got his purple belt afterwards. Put Chairez against Carlos Hernandez. Put Lacerda against... I have no idea because he should be cut. He's like 0-5, 0-6, something like that. Which is it? Let's see here. Daniel Lacerda's UFC career. All right, here we go. Knocked out by Jeff Molina. Knee barred by Francisco Figueiredo in the first round. Second round in Molina's case. First round, ground and pound loss to Victor Altamirano. Second round, ground and pound loss to CJ Vergara. Premature stoppage against Chairez. And then now loses by triangle choke in the first round by Chairez. He's made it out of the first round twice. He has lost. Why is this guy on contract? He's also, I think, missed weight twice. No, it was Vinicius Salvador that missed weight previously. Yeah. So only one weight miss, but still. Shouldn't be around. I get that we're struggling for bodies at flyweight, but come on, man. Claudio Puelles versus Fares Ziam was a fight I scored for Ziam. It was a lot of like both of their worst, both of them like showing off the worst aspects of their game. In Puelles' case, he landed 4 significant strikes in 17 total. I scored around for him somehow that he landed 4 strikes in. I don't know. I would say I want to rewatch this fight and just give all 3 rounds to Ziam, but I don't actually want to. I don't want to. It was Ziam getting taken down like bizarrely easily by a guy who doesn't have great takedowns in Puelles, and Puelles having no idea how to punish him or really do anything at all, except for control. It was kind of dull. And I'm not really excited for either fighter going forward. But in fairness, I don't think I was excited for them coming in. So I've always had this weird feeling with Ziam that he's just not that good. Not that he's not that good, because I think he has like all the physical aspects. Like he's a 6'1", 75-inch lightweight. Has some pretty okay distance tools. His offensive wrestling is pretty good, but his defensive wrestling is kind of bad. I just get the feeling that there's something just inherently breakable in him, and it's just that Puelles didn't go for the break that really got him through this. Ziam versus Kutalatse, Puelles versus Jamie Malarkey. By the way, this is where I lose my my notes. That fight right there was the re-beginning of my notes. Ronaldo Rodriguez, aka Lazy Boy, he submitted Dennis Bondar with 1 second left in the second round by rear naked choke. This fight was everything that was kind of like wrong with Bondar, like bunch of takedowns, don't get me wrong, but like an overly aggressive style where he gives up position and he just doesn't have the physicality to actually control a guy or really do much with it. Like there was a point where he dropped for like a heel hook, which was a bad idea. There was a point where he dropped for, I don't remember what it was. There was like 2 separate moments where he dropped for like low percentage submissions and just end up giving Rodriguez like top control and whatever. And like on the feet, Don't get me wrong, Rodriguez is a horribly flawed fighter. He waits for you to throw. He's like a dedicated counter striker, which I don't think is going to work at flyweight. But Bondar is a bully who doesn't actually have the physicality to bully. And he ended up getting rear naked choked here. Rodriguez, like I said, you put against Mendonca as a like kind of, I guess, interesting test fight. And like Bondar, he's like 0-3. I would get rid of him, I guess. Like if he's got a fight left on his contract, you can go Dana White Contender Series stuff, but like that's about it. And then we had Felipe Dos Santos versus Victor Altamirano, which was basically a question of Altamirano had a bunch of takedowns and slightly more strikes landed, like 3 extra strikes landed significantly, but less strikes landed by Dos Santos in general. And Dos Santos landed the better, cleaner stuff. He got the win. I don't know if either guy really particularly won. I remember thinking that the Miguel Jimenez 30-27, which he scored for Altamirano, he's the only judge who scored for Altamirano, that was kind of wrong because looking back at it, I realistically think you have to give the third round to Dos Santos. That was, and the second round to Dos Santos, and probably the third round to Dos Santos. First round I gave to Altamirano. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't do anyone any favors. Altamirano is not a great wrestler. He managed to take you down 9 times. That's a big problem. And for Altamirano, well, I shouldn't say this was bad for Altamirano because like he's kind of in that Dana White Contender Series welcome to mold anyways. Like there's not enough physicality to him and he's like very, very janky and awkward. So I guess this is fine for him. I guess going to split decision is fine, but like this is not a good look for Felipe Dos Santos in a nutshell. I've got Dos Santos against Azat Maxim just to give Maxim a win, basically. And Altamirano I've got against Felipe Bunez because Bunez lost to Joshua Van, but like I think there's a little something there. Muhammad Naimov beat Eric Silva. Largely kind of came to an end when Silva like stepped on the gap in the cage and canvas, and apparently tore his ACL. Injury stoppage. Naimov versus Jonathan Pierce. This was a fight that really earned him nothing and didn't make any sense. And for Silva, I don't know because he's going to be facing a significant time on the IR, so to speak. So, anyways, that was the fight night. It was very good, even though towards the end there I had I had some critiques for the early fights. And for the late fights, but like the middle part, like the middle juicy bit there between, I don't know, what would I say here? Zellhuber down to Barcelos Quinones, like those 4 fights, very good, very peaky. And then even Shirez versus Lacerda, which I broke down very, very, very little of because like it's a Lacerda fight, but like it was a Lacerda fight. It was fun. It was chaotic. I guess that would be the best way to put it. But yeah, there were some letdowns. Ziam versus Pelelos is not a great fight. Aguilar versus Mendoca, not a great fight. Rodriguez Bondar was fun, but like just not a lot of faith for them in the future. Dos Santos versus Altamirano was a bit of a letdown, and Naimov got an easy win, and then. Or actually, Ortega versus Rodriguez, actually. I'd include that. That was part of the peak. It's just like, I can't shake off the fact that Moreno just didn't perform very well. And Flyweight's in a weird spot. There you go. That's what it boils down to. Anyways, check out my links down below for social media, video game stuff, the Discord server with the Fight Simulator, which I will run Bloody Mania February. I think tomorrow will be the day. Let me just look at my calendar here. Am I forgetting something that I have to do tomorrow that would preclude that? I mean, I am starting a new job tomorrow. That is part of it. But am I going anywhere after that? Please. Yeah, well, I'll probably do it. Yeah, I'll probably do it tomorrow or maybe Wednesday. Will be the next Bloody Mania. Costa Rica deathmatch style card. And you can still get your challenges in for that. So, anyways, have a good day. I'll be back on Thursday with my thoughts on, well, a truly horrendous fight night that is coming up. Anyways, have a good week.